I'm Dave Johnson along with Glenn Contour. It's another edition on the Wizards Podcast Network of Full Court Press. It is so good to see him as we do all these now connected through our new technology Zoom that we're all enjoying. We love him with the Bulls Radio Network. Bill Wennington just had an amazing NBA career, which we're going to get to. But Bill, I just want to start out with, as we go through this, and I think it's something that as we talk to so many people, yeah, we miss the games, but you know what? We miss the community and the camaraderie, and that is why it is so good to connect with you today.
Thanks very much, Dave and Glenn. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys, but you're absolutely right. As a player, that's what it was. You miss the guys that you're playing with and the community and the locker room before, after the game, and going out at night. And then obviously when we travel coming into Washington to talk to you guys and see what's going on in Washington and with your team and our team, that's the real fun of the games. The games are fun to do because we love basketball, but really meeting each other and hanging out and getting to talk and chat is really the best part of it.
Bill, how has it been for you? You know, everybody's got their own stories and trials and tribulations of being quarantined. How has it been for you and the family? And what have you learned about yourself from a self-reflecting standpoint?
I saw a great quote on was it Facebook or Twitter the other days. Remember when I said if I had a lot more time, I'd get so much more done? I was wrong.
Right.
You know what? You can only do so much around the house. And I'm not really a house. I love being in my house. I'd rather stay home. I'm a homebody. But I'm a social person, so I do need to get out and have things to do. So it's been difficult with that. And I'm in Chicago. I know you guys, it's a little bit warmer out there in the Washington, D.C. area. But it's been cold here, so it's hard to get out and do a lot. So I've only been able to do a little bit of yard work so far. But it's been very difficult to keep busy.
Yeah, well, it's not much warmer here in D.C. I got news for you, but I'm sure it's a little bit colder in Chicago. As you have this time for pause, and we're going to get into now suddenly, obviously, you probably never thought you'd be talking this much about the 98 Bulls in the spring of 2020. But before we get to Last Dance, just has this time given you a chance just to reflect on your career and the journey you've been on? And I don't mean that in terms of you want to bang your chest about it, but you know what? We're all through a period where you're so busy, and you played in Italy, you're all over the world, and nonstop. Now you've stopped. What have you thought back to?
Well, you go back and I remember a little bit, and I thought I was, and I probably was a little bit more mature than most guys that are coming into the league. 18, I got my 4 years at St. John's, and I had a great teacher and Coach Conaseca, and really taught us as players about life and what it's like. So I thought I was prepared for what the NBA was going to offer, and I was pretty good, but I didn't realize the business aspects of it and the finality of it, that you only have so much with your body. When you're young, you think you're invincible. You're going to be doing this forever. And I remember when I was 23 years old and playing with the Dallas Mavericks, thinking this is the greatest thing there is, and wow, this is going to last forever, and we're going to have fun. But then as you hit that, you know, I was fortunate enough, I was playing, and I was 30 when I came to the Bulls. You start to realize this isn't going to last forever. What am I going to do? And fortunately, I made the right steps with my education and television, radio production, that I kind of had a plan kind of set up in place, you know, the just in case type thing, that I can't play basketball forever. And it's worked out, but it really does make you think, especially when you look back now on the good times that we had and the great teams in Chicago, how special that really was, because it doesn't happen for athletes very long, because we all are going to get, father time is going to beat everybody, and you're going to have to stop playing. But when you achieve something that's that good, with the way it was with the Bulls, I played 15 years professionally that long, that's pretty good. And I remember all the good things. I've been texting with Judd Bushler and Randy Brown and a couple of the guys on the team, and just what it's been like, and all the memories that are coming back. And it's been just wonderful to go down memory lane.
You know, Bill, every time, we both do the color on the radio together. We always interview each other, and through the years, we've been doing it a long time. And, you know, now that The Last Dance is out, it's not just about Michael Jordan. It's really about the whole team. We saw your your cameos there, and it was a lot of fun. But this is what jumped out at me when I look at that team was so physical. I mean, like, like of not just like obviously Jordan, which skews everything, and Pippen, but the physicality and the toughness and the strength of that team with guys like you and Luke and Scottie and Michael. And people forget how tough Randy Brown was of a defensive guard, and all those guys. You add that to the chemistry, you certainly did have something special.
Glenn, you're absolutely right. And I've looked back, and unfortunately here in Chicago, when the NBA was postponed, the local sports station here in Chicago started rerunning Bulls games from the past. And they just finished up last week the 96 playoff run. And I didn't watch every game because I was like, I've been there, done that. But I started watching a couple of the games just because there was nothing else to do. So you're watching and I realized what a great defensive team, to hit on your point, that team was. And you had Ron Harper, Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman were four guys that could literally stop anyone. Then you throw in Luke Longley if you're playing to Shaquille O'Neal. Oh, by the way, Dennis Rodman could play Shaquille O'Neal well if he wanted to go slow. And then Tony Kukoc, who's a 6'11" ball handler, left-handed guy that could drive to the lane and shoot threes. So Phil Jackson had many options to go big or small. And those guys, we called them the Dobermans when we were out there. And it was always Ron Harper started with the barking, who let the dogs out? And they could literally, and they would, in the fourth quarter, last 4 minutes in a close game, they'd shut other teams down, and they could not score. And it was just amazing to watch them. And that's what struck me the most. Offensively, I knew what we were. I mean, Michael was phenomenal, could score against anyone. And Scottie was the same way. Tony could create his own shot and get things going. And the rest of us just executed. And we're in the right spot at the right time, knew how to space the floor well, and most of all, knew how to get out of Michael's way.
That's an important play. Get out of his way.
Yes.
It was dumb. It was Phil Jackson, as it's been told now, that coined Last Dance, as he was informed, no matter if the team had gone 82-0, this was going to be his final season as head coach. And I'm sure you've heard some of the comments. Steve Kerr made the comment that it may have seemed strange to some people at the time, but Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, free agency was coming. In some ways, it was time, if I can paraphrase Steve Kerr's words. Just your take on the emotion when suddenly it was announced this is Last Dance, and it was announced by Phil Jackson.
Well, we had all heard rumblings that it was coming. It was actually, a lot of us had heard the year before that the year before might have been the last year. And I believe every single guy went into Phil's office and asked him, begged him to stay, and hey, we can do this one more year, we can do it. But when he came in, and that was for the 97 season, not the 98 championship. So it was really a whole year before this. And if you read into the documentary a little bit, it was said Jerry Krause was thinking about it and wanted to move things on a little bit sooner, but they kept together. And then Phil knew that last year was going to be it. And he came out with the Last Dance thing. And you got to understand, Phil is one of the greatest coaches, the greatest coach that I ever played for. And I played for some good ones, and Lou Conaseca, Jack Donahue with the Canadian Olympic team, and Bob McKillop when I was in high school, who really helped mold me. But Phil was very cerebral and knew how to keep everyone on the same page. And he had a little bit of time to think about it. And it was actually a perfect scenario to come up with that, because he was able to gather us and get us to focus on the task at hand, but also he wanted us to look around and pay attention to what was happening, because he knew it was special and that it just doesn't happen that often.
Obviously playing with Michael was, just must have been an amazing experience, not just playing with him, but just sitting that close and being involved and watching what he can do every day. I want to ask you about Michael, but I want to talk about Pippen first, because, people don't realize defensively what a beast he was, and, how his game progressed from when he first came to the Bulls till, the last couple of years he was there.
Glenn, he was what really opened my eyes to Scottie, and I had played against him already. I'd been in the NBA 6 years, and played against Scottie a lot and played against Michael as well. But at that time, when I first came to the Bulls, Michael had just left for baseball, just retired the first year after the third championship. And I got here with Steve Kerr. And I remember talking with Steve Kerr as training camp started. We looked at each other, and Steve looks at me and goes, "Man, we sure picked a good time to come here now, right?" Obviously, with Michael leaving, not a lot of expectations on that team. But what we didn't know was how good Scottie was and how Scottie was going to be able to perform and step up to the podium and be the man. And he did a great job of that. And we won 55 games that year. And I saw how Scottie was an amazing player at both ends of the floor. But to your point, Glenn, defensively was unbelievable. He was 6'8", could guard point guards. As a matter of fact, when we were playing Indiana in the '98 season, and Mark Jackson was there, we won 7 games. But one of the ways we stopped, and probably the most prevalent way we stopped, we'll say, was have Scottie guard Mark Jackson and defend the point guard and really make it difficult on him. So he could just guard so many guys and was so quick. And one of the reasons why Luke and I look so good in the low post guarding Shaq, who could just score on anyone, is if we could just get Shaq 2 feet off the block, that was enough space to have Scottie Pippen come down double team, bother Shaq, but yet still get back out to his man behind the 3-point line so he didn't get a shot. That's how well he was able to rotate down and get back to his own man to literally make force Shaq to pass the ball out. Not a lot of guys can do that. And it was phenomenal. And as a big who's guarding someone that's unstoppable, I mean, I literally could put my body in front of him. He's just going to walk over me. And it's how big and strong Shaq was. But Scottie was there to help out and did phenomenally. And I think he was underrated. And at that time, those 2 years that Michael wasn't in the league, Scottie Pippen was the best player in the NBA.
Bill, do you see any similarities between Kawhi Leonard and Scottie Pippen? I mean, you've seen these guys now, because it seems like those hybrid type guys, everybody compares them to Scottie and Kawhi. But what do you see between those two?
Well, I see they're both. I think Scottie was a great playmaker, as Kawhi can be and does at times. But Scottie, I think what Scottie really did well was he understood where he fit into the team and what he had to do. I mean, he led the team in assists several years, and what was of those teams had the most assists on that team. You saw the graphics in the document. Was a great teammate. Was accountable for all his actions on the floor, contrary to what the media has you believe and all the things. Hey, did he make mistakes? He absolutely did. But to us as a team, he was accountable for his actions, was very apologetic and sincere if he made a mistake and got corrected on it. We broached it with him, and he was phenomenal. So as far as Kawhi, the defensive pressure that both of those players have and the length that they have and the quickness and the ability to guard several players on the floor is absolutely amazing. So that's a great comparison.
I'll start the Jordan portion of this conversation since, of course, it is Last Dance. And just begin with what it was like to be his teammate. And specifically also in that situation, it had to be a little bit melancholy or surreal to know that you were part of his final season.
Dave, people ask all the time, what was it like to play with Michael Jordan? I said, you know what? It was great because I like winning too. And if you understand that, and that's your premise, you're there to win basketball games. That's what it's all about. Then you understand what Michael's doing. And I got onto that early. I was fortunate enough to play at St. John's with Chris Mull, another great player who was one of the original gym rats, was in the gym all the time. And because he was doing that, and I just wanted to keep up with Chris, I ended up doing it. And I found out that living in the gym is better for your basketball game than not living in the gym. So I was able to kind of learn a little bit that, but Michael takes it to a whole different level. And he's competitive. He wants to win everything and anything he's doing, from something as trivial to who could take the least amount of steps from a half court to the baseline, to who could make a half court shot first, to obviously winning basketball games, playing cards, golf, whatever, you name it. But as small as it was, if Michael was involved, you were competing at 100%. And he expected that. And if you were fortunate enough at any time to beat him, it wasn't over until he beat you again. Now, it might take a couple of days if you're really good at something, but he was going to come back and challenge you and get that victory back and where he'd be on top at the end. But you really start to understand where he was at and what he really wanted, which was to win. And he knew he couldn't win the championship unless all 12 guys on the roster did their job and competed 100% every single day. So he was going to push you. If he thought you weren't competing at the highest level that you could, he was going to let you know about it. And it wasn't easy. He was brutally honest. And fortunately for me, I think I was an overachiever, and I think he understood that. So we didn't get into it with me a whole lot, but there were some guys that he really had to push and try to motivate to get them to understand that they had to be at the top level all the time if we were going to win.
You know, Bill, the three of us, we're so lucky to do what we do. We call games, and we have the moments where we go, whoa, I can't believe what I just saw, right? And I know you've seen a lot of MJ, oh, I can't believe what I just saw moments. Does one stand out where you were like playing with him, or you were sitting on the bench and you look to the guy next to you, whether you're playing or not, and go, I cannot believe what I just saw? Does one stand out?
Two do. One is the flu game in the playoffs in '97, where he's sick and has 102 fever in Utah, Salt Lake, before the game, and had a phenomenal game and was just unbelievable. And I'm watching him before the game, and I go to the equipment manager, John Ligmanowski, and say, oh my, we're in trouble. There's no way he's going to play tonight. And John goes, nah, don't bet on it. I guarantee you he's going to have a great game tonight. I'm looking at Michael, and he's chalky, he's drawn, he looks horrible, has no energy. He's sleeping and lying down in the trainer's table with an IV hooked up in his arm. And he just looks dead to the world. And he come out and played a game that, no one expected that out of him that night. And it was phenomenal. Wins the game. It was unbelievable. And then the other one was early on in the 72 and 10 year. We're in Vancouver at the end of our first West Coast trip. We used to call it the circus trip. And we just come from LA. We beat LA. We're playing Vancouver, an expansion team in the league. They're not very good. And the whole team came out flat. We're tired. It's the last game of I think it was a 7 or 8 game road trip. And we just want to go home. And we're leaving from Vancouver that night after the game. And we're down. And rookie Derek Martin started talking trash the last 6 minutes of the game to Michael. You're not that good. We're beating you. And they were beating us at the time by 6 or 8 points. And Michael wasn't playing well. The team was just flat. And Michael scored 16 points in 6 minutes and won the game all by himself, literally all by himself. And at the end of the game, I just remember thinking that's unbelievable. I have never seen that, where one guy can dominate and take over, both offensively and defensively. He got steals and a couple block shot, I believe, in the last 6 minutes, and was just absolutely phenomenal. And after the game, every player that was on the bench went over to Derek Martin and said, thank you. You woke him up. You got him going. And he just had that ability when, the rest of us are just out of gas and there's nothing left there, that he found and had another gear or another gas tank to push himself through it and get it done.
And what about Michael in terms of personally? I always think about a couple years ago when we were in Charlotte, and I was walking to the bus, and he saw me, and obviously we had dealt with each other before, but I don't pretend to be his friend or that close. And he comes over and says, good to see you. How you doing? You can tell he was sincere. Spent some time. So as competitive as he was on the court, what was your take about his interaction with his teammates as people?
Well, one, he's very smart. He's very intelligent, understands the game, understands business, understands everything. And if he likes you, he likes you. And if you're loyal to him, he's really a fantastic guy and is really loyal. And you see him going out of his way for teammates. Myself, if I'm in their area, he tracks me down and comes to find me and says hello. And he'll go up and say hello to you and be great. And he cares about you, knows about your family and what you're doing. And he's always asking about your kids and wife and what's going on and how you're doing. And he always leaves. If there's ever anything I can do for you, let me know. And I'm still waiting for that $1 million check, but I don't know if he has my right address yet.
Yeah, hey, Bill, it's funny, you think about that team and, there's so many players to pick to talk about. But Rodman, especially at that point of his career, I don't want to call him a loose cannon, but I think that might be understated. Yet the guy, and I think I might have told you this, is the best rebounder I've ever seen. I don't forget pound to pound, no pound to pound. Talk a little bit about, what you've observed with him, because, with all the quirkiness and the piercings and everything else, it didn't matter when he stepped on that court, man. To me, it was like, I want to play with that guy.
Oh, absolutely. You want to play with him. And to that point, so did Scottie Pippen. And he and Scottie had bad blood going back to the Detroit days when Dennis knocked Scottie on his, and whether you think it was a cheap shot or not, on his butt and threw him on his back. So Dennis was a guy everyone wanted to play with. And when he stepped on that floor, he was just number 91. And, everything else didn't matter. The neat thing about Dennis was, you're right, he was going through a time coming from San Antonio where he wasn't perceived very well, where that craziness started with the tattoos, hair colorings, and body piercings and all. But when he got to Chicago, Phil was great with him, told him, say, look, you do what you want to do off the court. I can't control that. You're your own person. But we have practice every day at 10 o'clock. I expect you here. And that first year, he was pretty darn good. And because that was the thing, Dennis was going to, like you say, a loose cannon. He's going to go off and do his own thing. But that first year, he was pretty good. Really didn't miss much at all. And you could tell on the floor that he really wanted to win. And besides that, he's a great guy. He's one of the most generous people you'll know. Forget about what you see in the media and hear about in the bars and when he's out gambling, drinking, and carousing. He's quiet and shy. And we'd ride motorcycles together and go out to lunch, and we'd have a conversation ourselves and be talking. But if other people came up, he kind of clammed up a little bit and listened to their stories and showed genuine interest in what other people were showing us, tattoos and piercings, and everyone thought it was cool. And the wide variety range, I'm running off on a tangent here, but the people that came up to Dennis were from men in business suits to guys, motorcycle guys that you thought were just got out of prison. And it was amazing, the variety of people that would come up to Dennis and just to want to share their stories with him. And Dennis was very receptive to all of them and took the time to talk to them and make them feel important for a few minutes during the day. So he was a great guy. But you talk about his rebounding. It wasn't only his rebounding, Glenn, it was also his defense. And he was another guy that can defend a lot of different guys on the floor. At times he'd be able to switch onto a point guard and stay in front of them. If you go back and watch the films, and I'm sure you'll see it in the upcoming clips, especially the next 2 episodes, where he can guard Shaq and do as good a job as anyone else and bother him with his rebounding ability and just his footwork and moving laterally around Shaq to bother him enough and then to go get the rebound on a missed shot. So he really was an important piece of that team and should get a lot more credit than he does get as well.
Yeah, and actually my takeaway, when somebody asked me about Dennis Rodman, all I can remember when I used to have to do interviews for the pregame shows, going into the visiting locker room, and he was on a bike, and it looked like he was watching game tape studying. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but it looked like he was a real student of the game. So for all the zaniness, it looked like he was doing a lot of game prep.
He'd always watch film, and he'd watch film at night. And he was one of those guys that didn't need a whole lot of sleep. He could take a 2-3 hour cat nap and wake up and be fine, then take a nap later that day and be fine the rest of the day. So just did not need a lot of sleep. And he was also a gym rat in respect. All of us are in the gym, and especially big guys, we're in the gym and we're trying to bench press 350 pounds and squat 800 pounds. And he never tried to overload weight, but he would do repetitions of lighter weights forever. He'd go in the gym after practice and be on a reverse curl bar doing tricep pushes and pulls, and he'd have 40, 50 pounds on there and do 200-300 sets of them and just reps of them and just keep going at it. And at the time people were looking at it like, what are you doing? You're not doing anything. But he was really working on it, and he was strong. And to think of him as he was listed at 6'9", but I think he was more like 6'8". And to rebound and be as strong as he was doing something right. And the other thing was he could run forever and never got tired, which was amazing. And it just a lot of fun to play with, a great teammate. And the other side note is this was the perfect team for him to be on because we were all pretty much veterans. There were no real young players on the team except for Jason Caffey was our rookie. Dickie Simpkins had been around for a couple of years, but everyone else was mature, had been in the league for a while, and understood what was going on. So Dennis's distraction off the court weren't going to really cause a lot of distractions for us on the court because guys were mature.
All right, we'll close. We're running out of time. We'll close with this. This Last Dance is going on. What do you hope people take from the documentary that everybody's watching? Because you were privileged to be a part of a period of time that few people could even imagine being a part of something like that. So what do you hope people take away from The Last Dance?
Dave, Glenn, I don't care what other people take away from it. For me, it's a great trip down memory lane. And I believe that everyone that saw Michael play will remember how good he was. Because you forget, we're talking over 20 years ago. It's unbelievable how good he was and what he did every night. And especially for me, what he did in practice every day. It wasn't just in the games that he did that. He was doing that every day in practice. And that's what made us so good in the games, because Michael demanded that. But for the young people that are the naysayers and get offended when someone says Michael Jordan is better than LeBron James and want to punch your lights out or cuss you out on Twitter and social media, this will be a way. And again, there's going to be naysayers no matter what. It doesn't matter. But they're actually going to get to see a little bit more film and see just how competitive Michael was and how good he really was, and why there's so many people from my generation, our generation, that understand and know why Michael is the best there ever was.
Well, Bill Wennington, you're the best. We appreciate your time with us on Full Court Press. Remember, all podcasts continue to be on Wizards Radio 24/7, the Wizards app, SoundCloud, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and Google Play. Bill Wennington, thank you.
Dave, Glenn, thank you very much. Pleasure to be with you guys.
For Bill Wennington, Glenn Kotzer, I'm Dave Johnson, and that's Full Court Press.